have Martin Nkaari. Martin Nkaari is more leaning towards the issues of policy and law as regards security, and he will give us a presentation just to give us an indication of what framework we have in terms of legislation, what policies, and how can people like us, the resident association, take advantage of those kind of frameworks to further our interest and our participation on issues of security. Nkaari is a director at the Security Academy, which is a private firm, and we now invite you to come and make a presentation. Karibu.
Mr. Joseph Boynet, the IG, Your Excellency Dr. Pindi Hazara, Kara, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Martin Nkaari, director at the Security Academy. The Security Academy is a research, policy and training firm that looks mainly at policy and laws, regulations and guidelines in the security sector. Our realization has been that there is a lot of criticism, commentary, analysis around security, but there is a gap in the research, and detailed research into the policy, laws, and guidelines in the sector, and that's why the Security Academy was formed, and that is our main work. So for today, in the role of residents associations in promoting safety and security in Kenya, I have titled my presentation, "A Man's Home is His Castle," and this is a very ancient proverb, and that's why we say a man's home. It's an ancient English proverb. I guess if we were to say it today, we would say a man's and a woman's home is their castle. And this is because when you look at residency association and law enforcement, and you look at the history of both, you will find that public law enforcement is a very recent phenomenon. Public law enforcement really took form in the late 19th century. But for the thousands of years before that, human society has mainly been self-organized around security. So the idea of residence association is indeed not a new concept. It's a very old concept because the right to self-protection, the right to self-help has existed. And in human history, it was the individual who held the right to self-protect first, and then from that there were layers of organizations as you moved ahead, until a point where society became industrialized, organized, and then public law enforcement really became an issue. And when you think about security today, we think about public law enforcement, we forget its history, and we forget that the history of security is a self-help. It's a self-help idea, and therefore it's encouraging when we look at residence association as a form of a security measure. It's not a recent phenomenon. It is anchored in law. It is anchored in policies like the Nyumba Kumi initiative. It is anchored in law, in the right to self-help, the right to self-protection, the right to self-defense. In fact, for an array of crimes that involve assault all the way to murder, self-defense is actually a complete defense. So the idea to associate and to guarantee your security together as a neighborhood is a right anchored in law and in policy, and indeed as a right to private protection. The gap, in our view, is in the middle class. The middle class is, especially in the urban environment, has a high sense of transition. Very few people in the middle class feel they belong where they do. They have a sense of mobility, which highly leads to a sense of, they don't have a sense of permanence with where they live. And this is where the biggest challenge is, because people do not belong, therefore people do not associate, and this raises a huge challenge for law enforcement and for community security as well. And this is a critical part of the community, as we would say, and is a place we would like to encourage Kara to focus on. Because again, this is it's where the professional classes, it's where commentators are, it's where analysts are. These are the people we have educated, gone to university and everything, but they are critically missing from that association, and they are critically missing from what it would lead, what kind of association with law enforcement would be required. We also, the evening party Kilelesho police station organized the other night, and it was sad that it was reported that the residents didn't show up. That's very, very typical of a middle class setup, and their involvement in the community and what they think about the community. You know, they just believe once you've paid your rent and everything, security belongs to the landlord and everything, and there's really no sense of community in these places. But they are a critical part of society that we must bring on board because they have so much to offer. They engage a lot, they have the views, they have the education, but they are missing from this, and their input will be a very good thing for law enforcement. So our challenge is to residents associations to actually look at this critical class, which we also say misses from political action. It talks a lot, and that's all it does. So it's about time we took them from talking to action and participation in society. Organization is very important. Decay abhors organization. Organization is a deterrent to crime. Any people who have ulterior motives and they look at any society and find it organized will think twice before they engage in such a community. They love communities that are fragmented. They love places where people don't care. And this is what we usually call the broken window theory, that if a criminal passes by today and finds a broken window in one house, and they come tomorrow and still find the window broken, and they come the third day and the fourth day, consequently, a sense of decay sets in, and people will start abusing the law. You will find another window broken, and crime escalates. So organization takes care of this, that if something is broken where there is a residents association, it is quickly fixed, because people care, because people are vigilant, and vigilance really helps with law enforcement. So it's critical that we organize as residents association, because it is deterrent to crime. It pulls resources of everyone, including pulling eyes and ears, which are very critical in security. Information sharing. You probably hopefully have a WhatsApp group for the place you live. A lot of places are getting that. It might not be formally organized right now as an association, but even that WhatsApp group is, an informal part of that, and this is what we should encourage. Public participation through residents association is critical, because not all of us can represent or can be present at public participation forums. But for example, I believe CARA, as an organization of organizations, is able to pool views, resources, and present to specific forums for public participation. In fact, I have seen that residents associations are increasingly getting positions in the boards of authorities. For example, the Private Security Regulation Board has a vacancy for someone representing residents association. And public participation is important because even our legal framework now, policy framework, everything requires public participation. We have seen a lot of things being government initiatives, laws or regulations or guidelines being challenged on the basic that the process lacked public participation. Most recently, we saw the No Car Fridays that the Ministry of Transport was trying to organize. And the first card that was pulled was that there was no public participation, and therefore it was shelved. So, in terms of the role of residents association is to pool the resources, pool thought, pool ideas, and encourage public participation. It is not easy to be always contested for any action, especially in actions with regard to security or laws and regulation with regard to security, because some of these are usually very immediate because threats and risks and hazards keep mutating and you need to react. Therefore, we should consider that as a critical part for residents associations. Cooperation with law enforcement, that is clear. I believe that many residents associations are started with just the main idea of security before they move into welfare and other issues. The other issue is residents associations and commercial private security. Private security has now become an issue that is increasingly taking, the pages and the news headlines, and rightly so, because when you look at our security management infrastructure, you can tell that public law enforcement is pulling up its boots. There has been a lot of improvement in public law enforcement. There is investment, there is reforms, and we saw this at the 14 Riverside attack, that the public law enforcement reaction to the whole event gave the public the resilience it needed coming from such an attack. But when you look at private security, I think as a part of the security infrastructure, we have long forgotten about it, or ignored it, or not taken it seriously enough, because it's a very low threshold thing. We call them soldiers, and soldier is not a term of endearment or level of skill or professionalism. It's actually what one would say is an aberration. So residents associations now need to start thinking seriously about private security. We've all read the reports surrounding the 14 Riverside attack, and that there was casing days, weeks before the attack, and yet the whole complex is one, I guess, with tens, if not hundreds, of private security on any given day. Therefore, there was a major breach there, if one would say. And not just in this case, we have seen these videos circulating of private security people colluding to bring down, to steal cars and everything. So generally what we are saying is that we now need to start thinking of private security as a critical part of our security infrastructure, because generally they are the first people we meet, they are the front line, and even in terms of response, they would be the first people. The Private Security Regulation Authority is here. Yeah, it is talking tough. It is promising major transformation, and this is critical, but government will not be able to do that on its own. Residents associations, even as employers of private security, need to really look at this. So when you look at the big challenge in private security, as I've said, is that the barrier, there's actually no barrier to entry. Anybody can be a security guard. Anybody has been able to start a private security company. And this has made that, and there are also lone workers, the people who, I'm just employed as not from a company. And generally these are people who, they are not trained, they are just a presence, which is important. But then again, now it's time we needed to raise the capacity of the whole industry to do that. And most critical is the do we look when we're hiring a company? Generally, we've only been looking at price, and in security, private security, it's just been a race to the bottom. Who can offer the lowest price? The industry has not been offering any more value beyond the price category. If he quotes 15,000, I'll quote 10. I'll pay my guard 7,000, and we are slowly sliding into a place of where now private security is also becoming a major part of insecurity, because guards need to do much more than they are doing, working for 12 hours to make money. Some will wash your cars, that is good, but others will become insecurity in order to do that. So it's important that Residents Association, even with your membership in the Private Security Regulation Board, and even in the process of public participation that is coming up on the regulations to do that, and the training that they are talking about, and everything that we engage critically, because it's the most frontline form of security we are going to have for now. And Residents Association also have a vetting mechanism to play. I realize some residents associations actually vet you to see if you can rent a house in a certain place. They vet service providers. They vet a lot of things, and this is a critical part because. And vetting does not mean that you necessarily go to very serious background checks. No, it just means that what is the public reputation? Because everyone has a public reputation these days. If I Google anybody's name here, I am sure I will find anything, even if it's just a Facebook profile or a social media profile. So there is that critical need to vet, especially with regards to security. Who are you hiring? Who is working for you? Not just the employer, but the employee. Are these people compliant with the law? Or are you part of the mess that is contributing to this? When you attend private security functions, one of the most critical things I hear is from the private security union is that it is very saddened that even private security organizations that guard government facilities are really not compliant with the law, including the most basic of labor laws and regulations. So, is your resident association part of the problem, or is it part of the solution? With those remarks, for me, it was just a take back to where residents associations have come from. That we realize residents associations are preceded public law enforcement. People were organized in society for their own self-help and self-protection way before the police as we know them came. The police and other public enforcement bodies are now the face of security, but in order for them to function, we must realize it is in our communities that the law lives, it is in our communities that the law is broken, and we are usually the first responders to any violations of the law. So with that, I hope I have given some good comments, and looking forward. Thank you very much.